Welcome to my yard. At the request of some folks, I am giving you a little bit of a tour. Bear in mind, it's not at its peak. As you can see, the sunflowers are starting to fade, but the morning glories are pretty darn glorious. So here's the wide view. You can see we have the fence that we put up. It's hopefully gonna be a place where the berries can grow. We've got some blackberries. That's Figgy, the fig tree. But we've got some blackberries. Like I said, it's not peak right now. We've had some dry spells, so some of the stuff that was doing great earlier is kind of dying off a little bit, but it'll come back. Those are some raspberries. That's a new one. That's an old one that refuses to die, thankfully. It's the last of a few. And I hate squirrels, so we're gonna scare this guy away. Get out of here, you. Stay out of my yard. Guess I should get that fence repaired. That's a pecan tree right there. He's pretty small. You can see these beds that have the rocks around them used to have trees in it, pine trees. We were not really enthralled with the pine trees, especially when our neighbor's pine tree fell over and knocked out the power and destroyed our mailbox. That was not lots of fun. So we got rid of all of ours in the front. We do have some big oaks, and those are fine. They're a little more stable. Anyway, yeah, that was a couple of pine trees. That was 3 pine trees. These other beds, we just started digging up lawn. I found that the more I tried to have a nice lawn, the worse it looked. When I used some weed and feed, it killed off all the weeds, and it turned out most of my lawn was weeds. Since then, we've had a better lawn. Now that I don't want a lawn, the lawn looks a lot better, but it means we have to cut it, and it doesn't produce any food. So these 2 guys, Fritz and, oh gosh, forget his name, but Tom. Fritz and Tom are our new plum trees. We just got them this year. They're doing pretty good. That's a lilac bush. I love lilac. So as you can see, I've mixed flowers and fruit. This is our grape arbor. We actually got several bunches of grapes off of it this year. It was the first year we got more than just a few grapes. I had to trim back all the growth to get it to focus on making fruit instead of vines, and so that seemed to help. I tried something new this year with the flowers. I put sunflowers. I alternated between sunflowers and morning glories because I like both. I only plant stuff I like. That goes for vegetables, fruits, flowers, you name it. The morning glories are really taking over now, and I do need to clean up a lot of this dead stuff because it just looks kind of rough. Like I said, oh my goodness, I haven't looked at these in a while. Look at how pretty they are. And then some leftover marigold. I always mix marigold in with my tomatoes because they repel bugs. So this bed, we can actually cover it in the wintertime because of this frame that my little pseudo-engineering mind conceived of with some PVC pipe. So we cover it with plastic. In the winter, we can grow things like greens. In fact, you can see a few remnants of the collards and the chard that are still there. But there's beans and squash. This doesn't have the greatest dirt of all, so it's a little bit unproductive. We've gotten some little tomatoes from that little cherry tomato plant, and a few beans, but this soil definitely needs to be enriched. So here's the bulk of my garden over on this side. The little potted tomato plant, when I first planted it, I used some fish emulsion, and the dogs kept digging it out and trying to eat the fish emulsion and almost killed my plant. But now it's doing pretty good, even though it looks like it's struggling. It's actually doing pretty good. It just needs to be cleaned up a bit. These are all blueberry bushes. Well, that's a big fig tree. That's Eve. So all my trees, for the most part, have names. So we've got a couple of little blueberry bushes there. The blueberries actually did pretty good this year in spite of the late frost. We had a very warm winter, and then things started blooming, and then all of a sudden, bam, frost. And so it was challenging. Our peach tree, Gladys, she did not do well. She had some fruit, but it pretty much died off. That's Adam, the apple tree. He's been a little guy for a while, but it's interesting. He's actually a hybrid grafted together. So there's Gala and Macintosh and one other strain of apple, all grafted into one tree, because it's one of those fruits that needs to cross-pollinate. Likewise with my pear trees. This is James and Jack. So they've actually done really good this year, even though James looked like it had like a little blight going on it after the frost, but actually did produce fruit. But Jack has really, killed it this year. I think I'm going to get probably a bushel of pears off of Jack, and I probably ought to pull them before they go to the birds and the squirrels. So that's something on my list of to-dos today. Dew nectarine tree. Haven't quite settled on a name for her yet. Then I'm trying asparagus this year. They say it takes about 2 years for asparagus to actually produce. So this is our first year, so no asparagus this year. We keep greens in this because, as you can see, we've got a cold frame that we can put over it. I have netting on it now because we do have a problem with deer at times. So this frame goes over this bed, and this frame goes over that bed over there. When it's not populated with taller plants like this funky tomato. This is an awesome plant. These tomatoes are purple, and then when they ripen, they're purple and red. So we got beans and cucumbers. The cucumbers have done great this year. The beans have done all right. Can't complain. We've eaten a few beans. Then this bed is interesting. It's mostly tomatoes and then asparagus beans. I highly endorse asparagus beans because they have no strings and they grow really, really long. They look like, I can't even describe, but they're really long and tender, and you just cut them into smaller segments. You can see I had some that dried on the vine that I went ahead and composted because I couldn't cook them. And I've already harvested enough seeds. Yep, some Romas, some big boys, and then this is a hybrid or some sort of strain called a stripey, and it comes up with a really wild orange color. Corn did not do well this year. I think I planted them too close together, but the Roma is doing great. That is probably batch number 6 or 7 on that plant. It's really, really producing well. I'm not exactly sure why, because this is another one of those beds that doesn't have the greatest of soils. I usually put like mostly flowers in it because I like having something pretty to look at. My flowers have sort of faded, but the pink flowers came back from last year. Same way with those kind of purplish ones back there, even though they're fading. And that white one, those were from a previous year. And then you can see that little tomato, what the heck? Watermelon starting to grow. That is actually a wild vine. I had a watermelon plant in there last year, and the deer got to it, and so I just composted the melon that they ate most of, and look what I've got. I've got a watermelon plant this year. Woohoo! So, the berries, the figs, the tomatoes, the beans, the cucumbers, lots of fun. And all these, like I said, are all blueberries. As you can see, I do need to get out here and edge and trim. It's hard to find good help these days. But we do our best to keep Mom Nature in line. It's not an easy task. This does require a lot of work, but I wouldn't have it any other way. It is therapeutic. I call it my dirt therapy, and plus you get to eat stuff. You know, a lawn you gotta mow, but a garden, you tend it and you eat it. Yep, see, it's watering time because we haven't been getting much water, as you can see by my poor corn. And over in this corner, I just have to show you this one little thing. I gotta brag a little bit about those 3 bushes there. Actually, there's 5 bushes that were transplanted from the backyard. Look how nice they're doing. They've been there for years now, but you would never know that they came from the backyard. I moved them out of the way, those 3, and then those variegated ones over there. You would never guess that those were transplanted, but I moved them out of the way to make room for my garden bed in the back. I tossed some old clippings from some collard greens. They had gone to seed, so I just tossed them over here, and now I get collard greens growing here every year. We're gonna go in the back and take a peek of what's back there. Again, excuse the side yard. It's a work in progress. I hope to someday put a cistern back here where I can just water from my rainwater. That's, again, another project. And here we are in the backyard. Watch for dog poop. Yes. Well, I won't show that. Beans growing up. This is the area I cleared to make room for my garden. Right there is where those bushes were. But this garden bed has pretty decent soil. The only problem is my watermelons grow lots of vines, but not a lot of melons. I've got some wild morning glory, but I've also got beans growing. A good bit of tomatoes. See, there's the marigolds in with the tomatoes. You know, the dogs like to dig in the leaf compost. Oh, well, at least they're not digging up the lawn. And then we have, like I said, more tomatoes, more cucumbers. The cucumber is going crazy, as you can see. Lots of fun there. And I'm trying a new plant this year. It's an artichoke. I'm not sure how that's going to go, but that's an artichoke right there. I'll keep you posted. And then our greenhouse, again, pardon the overgrown nature of my yard. So the greenhouse doesn't get much use in the summer because it gets so blessed hot in here. See, I keep a thermometer just because you never know how hot it is until you actually measure it. But these strawberry beds have been in, I actually built the greenhouse around these raised beds. And see, I even put down some stepping stones. I've got shelves. In the wintertime, these shelves are fully occupied with herbs and some peppers, mostly the herbs though. They tend to do okay in here. And I can, with a little space heater, keep this above 40 degrees, which works out in the wintertime. We do get some frost. Then over here, and like I said, those strawberry beds have been around for, I have to keep the dogs out of the garden bed. They, you know, well, they like vegetables too. Is my, some of my herbs. and some lovely weeds, but some oregano and some thyme and lavender and mint and rosemary and dill. We've had some dry spells, so they're kind of crying right now, but they'll come back. I attempted some seeds of sage and some other, I forget what the other one was, and that did not work out well. Hey, gardening is trial and error. That's a bag that I grow potatoes in. Not a good season for potatoes right now. And then I have some sage that needs some water, an aloe plant. It's really done well. It lives in the greenhouse in the wintertime, so it's a few years old. Some beans that are done for the season. Then more hanging herbs, basil, Thai basil, and then a flowering plant that I actually brought back from the brink of death. Another flowering plant. I like flowers. They're a nice addition. And then all my peppers, the dog's water dishes, more potted tomato plants. Sometimes I can extend the season just a little bit by keeping them in pots. Then I can bring them in. Most of the peppers, I'd say about 60% of the peppers survive year to year. Some of these are new plants. Some of them are plants from last season or even seasons before that. I've got a couple of jalapenos that are several years old. That's a Meyer lemon. Meyer's doing great, producing some lemons this year, so I'm super excited about that. And they're really a good size, so I'm thrilled. I love the lantana back there that attracts the hummingbirds. We get quite a few of those guys. And then a tangerine tree, so it's producing fruit for the first time this year. Super excited about that. Yep, very cool. And more peppers. Just harvested a bunch of Tabasco peppers. I'm gonna try my hand at making some Tabasco sauce. Should be fun. And as you can see, our backyard has a lot of shade because of all these trees, which speaks to why we have a garden in our front yard. Not as much space, plus the pool takes up space, so it kind of makes it tough to do some proper gardening back here. But there's a possibility for putting some grapes back here over in this side yard since it gets a southern exposure. Anyway, that's my garden and my efforts over the last 10 years. We moved here in 2007. It's 2017, so as you can see, this is not a short-term prospect, but if you hang in there, you can really have a lot of fun and learn a lot in the process, and maybe one day become a master gardener, which I hope to be someday. Thanks for watching.